Hello and welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. It's Wednesday, yet again, time for the Light 'em Up Lounge. It is a pleasure and honor to welcome you all back to our weekly Light 'em Up live show. Again, today with a very, very special guest, a dear friend and fellow, and a true iconic premium tobacco and cigar family, represented today by the young generation. With me today is Enrique Seijas from Matilde Cigars, coming to us live from the Dominican after a somewhat stressful pro cigar week, and now ready again to conquer the world. Enrique, it is my pleasure, my honor and privilege to welcome you to the Light 'em Up Lounge, and thank you so much for taking the time and being here with us today. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks for the invitation, sir. I really hope we're going to have a great evening. Or in my case, afternoon, right?
No, absolutely. Enrique, again, thank you for being here with us today. And let's jump right in. And despite everything that's going on in the industry, you know, there's controversy. People are discussing the current state of the industry. We have a little boom going on. We have all the responsible marketing issues that are currently being hotly debated, primarily in the United States, but also internationally. But let's go back a little bit in time and focus on the history of Matilde and how the Seijas family, how your father and you got into this wonderful chapter of your life and this journey of premium cigars. Because funnily enough, Matilde is, in the grand scheme of things, a rather new brand to the market because you started in 2014. On the other hand, though, it is truly legacy, history, and it refers back to the early days of premium cigars in the Dominican Republic. Give us a little bit of a feel how, for you, what does it mean to, after everything that your father has accomplished, start anew together with him, venture out on this new journey, this Matilde, and how the whole idea of this new brand came to life?
Well, to start a little bit where our family comes from, the cigar industry, we are not third, fourth, fifth generation cigar makers. Actually, my dad is first generation. I am second generation through my dad. And he started in the industry as a sheer coincidence. And my dad was an industrial engineer. And at age 24, he graduated and landed a job at what now is Tabacalera de Garcia, which is the largest manufacturing facility in the world. That time, it wasn't a manufacturing facility. It was mostly used, they made only one brand, and it was mostly used for the tobacco sorting operations. For at that time was Gulf and Western. And they used to bring the Connecticut shade and Connecticut broadleaf and sort. And my dad was an industrial engineer. He was in charge of calculating the yields, making sure everything went well. Little by little, he built his way up to being the VP of operations and master blender for the factory. Obviously, there are different steps that he took to be able to get there. In 80, I believe it was 80, 78, he was transferred to the Canary Islands, where he worked for Tabacalera Insular, where they made, I believe, Monte Cruz, Don Diego, and that's where he actually started fully dabbling into the cigar manufacturing. And a few years later, they moved the full manufacturing facility to La Romana to build Tabacalera de Garcia and make it a manufacturing facility. So he built his way up to being in 84, the VP of Operations and Master Blender of the company. And years later, well, I was born in 84. So I'm about, when he was a VP, I was born. And I grew up in the factory. I had a 50,000 square feet playground. With a tobacco. Used to rollerblade. I used to play around. Everybody used to know, obviously, because my dad was a boss, everybody used to know me. So in some sort of a way, I grew in the factory, not in the industry, but in the factory. knowing everybody, seeing the passion that people put into the cigar manufacturing, into this process, and most importantly, seeing how my dad took this art form and he made it what I like to call industrialized art. He was a very curious person, or he is a very curious person, and I was always breaking down processes to see how he can make it better. So I'll explain a little bit because, and that's where my interest into the factories and getting to know what everything was going on. But when I started really getting into the industry was after I graduated from school, that I had a job at marketing and sales in the Dominican Republic, and went up to doing my master's in the United States. Then I wanted to come back to work with my father at the factory. And granted, I was a little bit older. I was about 24 when I started working full time with my dad at the factory. And the first thing that he said was, you have to know everything. I know you know everything, but you have to go through every single process. So my first job was I stripping tobacco. Then I was selecting tobacco. And I went through like a full course of 3 months and every course of doing the job. So I got to know everything. During that process, I did about a year and a half of that. I was able to go to Mexico to learn about the Mexico, famous San Andrean wrapper from the Terrence. I was in Santiago. To keep in mind, guys, that Tabacalera Garcia is in La Romana. Most of the tobacco, well, all the tobacco was in Santiago, so we used to travel a lot. But that's how I dabbled in. During this time that I was working with my dad and learning or getting to learn more of what he did and how the full manufacturing facility worked, he retired. 2011, he decided to retire from his position as VP of Operations and Master Blender. And we wanted to keep in the industry. I just started in the industry. He loves it. It's been his passion. I mean, we used to kid around with my dad that he had 4 kids. It's my sister, which is the eldest, Karen, my brother, and myself. We are the actual kids. And then he had the factory. My dad, I mean, he breathed, he sweated, and he did everything with tobacco. And not only tobacco, but the process. He was his passion. So he retired as the VP of this large corporation, but wanted to stay in the industry. And that's how Matilde comes along. So in 2011, he retires. We start preparing the process of launching Matilde, which was, as you said, launched in 2014. During that time, we wanted to somehow pay homage to the Dominican Republic. We are from the Dominican Republic. We use mostly Dominican tobacco. All our blends have at least 80% of Dominican tobacco. And we're Dominican, and we manufacture our cigars in the Dominican Republic. So what was a better way of paying homage to our country than looking for brands that were, what in essence dead, weren't in commercial use anymore, and reviving something? And that's when Matilde came along. We had a historian looking at different brands. We investigated, went to the newspapers, did all kinds of research, and we came along this brand called Matilde. Matilde was founded in 1876 and was founded by Simeon Mencia. About early 1913, 1912, the company went under and the brand wasn't commercially used anymore. So as a homage to our country, we decided to revive this brand, Matilde, and make it our own. If you notice, our cigars or our brand says Matilde in 1876 as a homage to the brand. At the same time, our logo, see, our logo is the Matilde. It's tobacco with an S, and it has 2 meanings. The first meaning would be Simeon, which is the owner. And the second meaning is Seijas, which is our last name. So it was a synergy between the branding. Where the actual logo comes from is for the seal of warranty, which initially was an S and an M. So what we did was that we took the S, we made it the tobacco for Simeon and Seijas, and then the M, we put the M as a Matilde, which is a woman in the middle. So that's how we started with Matilde. The process was totally different to what I was used to, or what I was exposed to, and what my dad did his whole life. He went from making millions of cigars and working with thousands of employees. I believe he went up to managing 5,000 employees and making about 35 to 40, I think it was 35 million cigars, the premium cigars, the ones that he most produced, to working in a small shop where, as I speak with you, we could speak to the people making the cigars. So for my dad, it was a playground, a dream come true, where he can express what he wanted with tobaccos, with the cigars, directly to the roller, directly to the buncher, instead of having to go from VP to the manager to the supervisor to everything, because that was the structure he had to do. It's not that he didn't walk through the factory and didn't talk to anybody, but in order to communicate something correctly, you had to go through everywhere. So for him, it was his sort of retirement, and for me, it was my introduction into the industry in some sort of a way.
And Enrique, when you think about scaling back in the most positive sense, from such a massive operation to a small boutique hands-on craft production, you mentioned it was a dream come true for your father, yet I would also assume that it might bring certain challenges with it that you probably do not realize as much when you work with 5,000 employees and you have way bigger resources for everything. And then suddenly you manage this intricate, small family operations. What were some of the key challenges that you had there and you had to adjust to?
How much time do we have here? So there's a lot of challenges, and obviously your main challenge is tobacco. My dad worked with believe an inventory of about $100 million worth of tobacco, 5 years worth of production of tobacco. So it wasn't hard to source tobacco because of my dad's time in the industry. Everybody knew him. But getting the access to the aged tobacco that we would have liked to use was different, because you buy tobacco and then you age it. People don't sell it aged. So that was the first part. And as you were saying, when it comes to having a corporation, there's different branches. We came from corporate, we came from manufacturing, and my dad's life was all in manufacturing. He was the face of a company, but he was known as the quiet man. And there's a reason why he was known as the quiet man. There's actually an article on CA because of it. It's because he said very few words, but he was always behind the scene making his cigars and doing what he loved, which is manufacturing, blending, and working with people. So one of the things that we did not see was how complex the marketing, the sales, the logistics of after factory was. So that was a huge learning lesson, learning curve that we had. Besides that, as you said, you have resources. I mean, when you were running your smaller operation, you can't go and say, okay, give me 100 bagels, give me 200 bagels of this, 300 bagels of that. So it was that kind of a resource. It's more of a financial constraint in some sort of a way. And when it came to manufacturing, it was very simple, because we literally, it was literally copied the manufacturing process of this large corporation in a smaller corporation. But when it comes to the commercializing side, that was the biggest learning curve that we actually had. When to grow, when not to grow, when we're growing too quickly. And we hit many speed bumps, and little by little, we've been going through them. And well, here we are.
Now, what I'm curious about is how much of that learning and the way you established the corporation in the first place, how much of that was intentional? Like, I assume that it was probably a dream come true, and you ventured into it, and then you sort of tried to find the middle ground, and sold everything out, or was there more of a plan, and like a true, let's make this a business case, and properly set everything up for success, and then run it smoothly? Or was it more of that, as I said, dream come true, and let's just do it, and we'll figure out the rest later?
No, you always have to have a business case. When anytime you're investing money, you have to have a business case. We had the branding concept of Matilde. Initially, Matilde is still, we work with our core blends. We have 4 core blends, which is your Serena, mild to medium cigar. We have the Renacer, which is our first cigar, which, nice thing to know, Renacer means rebirth. For us, it was a rebirth of this brand, and also the rebirth of my father in a different stage, as you were saying, from going super corporate, large, a lot of finance, to a smaller family-owned operation. We have our Quadrada, which is our box press, and our Oscura. The reason that we did these blends and core blends is that we wanted to keep it simple in order to be able to keep the consistency on our manufacturing. We have a Corona, Robustos, Toros, and Grandes in all sizes. And the branding was kept the same when it came to recognition. If you see all our boxes, we have Serena. So you have the logo, you have the name, but you also have blue. A lot of people remember color. So I say, oh no, usually when you say, I tried a Matilde, which one did you try? Was it Serena? I don't know. Was it the blue box? Was it the orange box? Was it the red box? So we have Quadrata, the Renacer, and the Oscura. So branding wise, everything was thought out. Besides that, we had a tour. We had a factory tour, actually. Our initial small facility in La Romana was a live factory tour where people could come in and tour and see the factory, see the manufacturing, see the process. And it's something beautiful when you have people coming in. And usually it's, let's say, you who smokes cigars comes in with somebody else that doesn't. And the person that smokes cigars ends up saying, well, we should be paying more for this, because they notice it's an art form. We manufacture it. Everything is handmade. From the moment the seed is planted to the moment you're putting the rings on everything is handmade. And a lot of people don't know that. They don't know what goes into it, the passion that goes into it, and how hard it is. And the nicest thing was that the people that did not smoke, they say, oh, wow, this is different. This is not tobacco. It's tobacco, but it's totally different. It's not mass produced. It's 100%. It's art. And so that was a cool part. And the idea behind that was having this tour and having people coming through the factory to get the name out there. And unfortunately, a few years later, about a year and a half, 2 years later, we decided to make the move to working with other manufacturing facilities. At that time, we still work with is Tabacalera Palma, that I was kidding with Johan about, because his background is Tabacalera Palma. And it's simple reasons. You need to find people that share your same values and your same passions. And we were looking for a factory that would give us manufacturing flexibility, for starters, and also will give us access to that large inventory of tobacco that we did not have access to be able to keep the core, to be able to develop more blends, more brands. And that's what Hochi offered us. I didn't mention it before, but my dad, besides being a tobacco person, is a people's person, and a lot of his passion in managing this large corporation or this large factory was helping out his employees. And he had a lot of programs, and he believed in people. He helped as much as he could. I mean, if he could, he helped any way he could. And that's because it's a selfless thing to do, but it's also a commercial thing to do, because it's handmade. If your cigar makers are happy, your cigars are going to be great. If you come in and you have a bad day, or you're having a bad day in your house, or you owe money, it's very probable that your blend or that cigars that you're making are not going to be as great as when you're happy and you're concentrated. So helping people help the cigars. And Hochi has the same concept. He helps his employees a lot. He's very human with his employees. So his cigars are well made. His people are happy. And at the same time, he has a tobacco. So you have two of your main pillars of cigar manufacturing, of making a great cigar, which is great tobacco and great human resource in one place. And that's when we did the move to Tabacalera Palma.
Was it a challenging move or consideration for you in general? We sometimes speak about that analogy, and with different guests on the show, we heard different perspectives. For Steve Saka, I believe he mentioned, God, I'm happy that I'm not involved in the whole process of owning my own factory and running my own operation, because then I can go in and sort of pick the very best tobaccos, the most textured tobacco, work with that. But I do not have to worry about all the other operational aspects that come with it.
He gets to play.
and for others, the end goal is always to become vertically integrated, control every single step of the process. How was that consideration for you, and how challenging was it to sort of take that deliberate step from your own boutique manufacturing operation to working with Hochi?
It's always a tough decision to make. I mean, you're closing a manufacturing facility, moving your production somewhere else, and at you lose some type of control. You're not in control 100%. Even though that we have full access to Hochi's factory, we can meet with them at any time. We have full access to the tobacco. It's still not our factory. And one thing that I learned, and it took me a while to learn, because I came from this square corporate where we did things one way, and that was a way to do it. And that's how I learned to do it, which was you made your cigars, you weighed your cigars, you draw tested 100% of your cigars, and all of this process. And then you come to a factory where you have the same values, but maybe their process is not 100% the same. Doesn't matter. It's not that your cigar's outcome is going to be worse or better. It's just different. So it takes a little bit of time to adjust. The decision was hard. It was hard because my dad comes from manufacturing, obviously. So that is his passion. So he's passing his actual passion towards another factory, which we trust, right? It's in Santiago, so I moved to Santiago personally. I uprooted and moved to Santiago, and you don't have 100% full control. But the easy part was that we were starting operations, starting a partnership with somebody that had shared the same values, same quality values, the same that had great tobacco, had a great setup factory. So it was emotionally harder than it was logically, because at the end of the game, as you were saying, we were a small operation. So now we're making cigars, we're making great cigars, but who's selling them? So we have to go out and sell them. So if I'm there, my brother's there, my dad's at the factory, who's out doing what? So that also gave us a little bit, Saka said, it gives you more liberty to saying, okay, we can focus on working with the tobaccos that you have already, so we can develop more blends and we can make sure everything is doing fine. We don't have to worry about the tobacco purchasing because we know it's there and it's aged. Usually tobacco used at Palma is at least 2 years aged on the coast. That's like the youngest that you get. And it gives me the liberty, personally, to be able to travel and to visit and to open new markets and develop markets and focus on the actual commercialization. Because we love making great cigars, but I don't want to smoke them all. I want you guys to smoke them. I want the world to smoke them, to try them. Because at the end of the game, it is a business. Yeah. So personally, it was tough business-wise and logistically. It was what made sense at that time.
I'd love to come back to the logistics and the sales part a bit later, but for actually, I believe 2 limited runs, you now also worked with another factory, with La Isla, which is fairly new as an operation and as a manufacturing place. Why that choice, and why that particular connection, and how was it different when suddenly you're not working with the operation that you've been used to for a couple of years, but you actually start with somebody new?
It's like going back to basics. So here's how I structure, or here how I use a lot of because I usually make a lot of the decisions when it comes to that. We have our core lines, or let's say our legacy lines, which are made at Tabacalera Palma. So you have your Serena, your Serena, your Oscura, your Cuadrata, and your Renacera, right? Those are always made at Tabacalera Palma. They will never move from Tabacalera Palma. I love working at Tabacalera Palma, and that would never change. So what I was looking for was, well, first of all, I've known Ostos since I was 18. I've worked with Ostos before when he was in Quesada. Do you know the history of Ostos?
Mm.
So I worked with him when he was in Quesada,
Mm.
and we had a very good synergy. And I've known him as a friend. And one of the things that I always say, because I don't own my own manufacturing facilities, I have to work with people that you trust. So when Ostos set up his operation, so it's a new operation, somewhat like we were a new brand behind an old name. Ostos set up a new manufacturing operation, but at the same time, he's been working in a cigar factory since he was 15, so for 20 years. So he had the experience, and he put that experience of a large factory into a smaller factory. What I was looking for with the limited exposure runs, it was a project, and it's still a project, where we have we're developing different blends, and will come out in batch productions. So the idea is to have a small production, which is pre-sold. We distribute towards our retailers. Right now, it's only available in the States, in the set retailers. So we distribute, and 6 months later, our new line would come out, which is the number 2. Where at the moment we are packing the number 2. So those are the ones that I showed you initially with the logo. This is the number 1, which is Mexican wrapper with Dominican binder and filler. And then we come out with the number 2, which is this one that we're packing. But here's the thing, the idea behind this is a way where we test markets. So we have the blend number 1, and blend number 1, let's say we made 1,000 boxes, and those 1,000 boxes were sold between 100 retailers, and they try it out. It's a great way for me to get feedback on how the thing is doing. And this is basically what we do. For me, it was I guess an answer to the what's new in the industry. Unfortunately, it's great for smokers, and it's great for consumers. But when you have to come out with new blends year after year after year, because it's what's new with what's coming out, sometimes you're not going to develop a blend that you love, you still put out. So what I was looking for was trying to address the what's new in a different way. So how it works is that 3 blends are going to be developed. Retailers, a set group of retailers are going to have those blends, and we get feedback. And when we start manufacturing a second batch of that limited exposure number 1, we've already had the feedback from those retailers. We know what worked and what didn't work. We know if we have to tweak something in the blend, and we also know what retailers did well and what retailers didn't do well. So with all that information, we make a second production. We increase that production. How it works is that if all retailers did great with that production, and that production was increased 100%, the allocation for that retailer would increase 100% as well. Mm-hmm. So in essence, the initial retailers are the ones that have the limited exposure. But as you know, the market does not work as it does. So sometimes we got a retailer say, I'll take half my allocation. So that's what you use to put towards other stores. In essence, what I was looking for is having this rotation where a retail would have an allocation of maybe 20 boxes of one, 30 of another, and 100 of another, because that's how it works in his store. Why? So in order to address the what's new, we developed 3 blends, which come out every 6 months. So there's always going to be a blend that you won't see that year. It'll give you enough time, it'll give the consumer enough time to miss the blend, but not to forget the blend. So when it comes time that the limited exposure number 1 comes out again 18 months later, the consumer's going to remember it. The retailer knows it's going to do well for him. So it's an easy buy for him commercially. It's going to be an excitement for the consumer saying, oh, this is new. I remember I tried this. I liked it very much. I'm in again. And you keep that in a rotation. So what does that do for me as a manufacturer? It helps me keep my core blends and consistency. I know what I'm using. I know what I need. I'm not, going crazy trying to make new blends all the time. It's the same ongoing blend. So it's a core blend that will come out every 18 months. So I can keep the consistency, which is what my dad always pushed towards. It's being consistent. I remember one time he tells me, and we're talking about consistency, and there was 2 things that he always told me. The fun part in cigar manufacturing is creating a cigar. That's your playground. That's where you put everything together, you break everything apart, you have fun, and you come up with a magnificent blend. The hard part, where the work comes, is to keep that consistent year after year. We're compared to all kinds of industry, to the wine industry, but wine industry has vintages. If you had a crappy vintage, well, it was a crappy vintage. I can't have a crappy, if we had a bad crop of Renacer, a bad crop of tobaccos I used in Renacer, it was a rainy season or a dry season. The consumer still expects the Renacer to taste as a Renacer he tried 10 years ago. So it's about consistency. And that's where the work comes in. So in order to keep that consistency and keep that work and keep the quality of our cigars, that's when we came up with that. So it addresses a part in the market of the what's new, but also helps us keep consistency in the market to make sure that the consumers are receiving what the best quality that we can give them. When it comes to working with Ostos, it's a similar dynamic with Hochi, because it's a one-on-one operation. And I said it's like going back to basics. It's because we're working with newer tobacco, where we're sourcing different things. So it's more of a playground. And it works perfectly with this project, as I was saying, because we're developing new stuff. We're evolving. These blends will evolve into its maturity. So it's
Enrique, I think it's a highly interesting concept, how you describe the limited exposure. Difficult there, especially when you're working with the limited release, is also to keep sort of your keep a consistency in the sales aspect as well, because you want to be available, you want to be on the shelf, you want to have a proper brand representation, while at the same time, with such a limited run, you will run out eventually. Enrique, can you hear me still? I think we probably lost your audio. Maybe it was a cable or something that went bad. Well, Enrique, let's see if we can get your audio back. And in the meantime, Johan, how about you show us your beautiful picture of Tabacalera Palma for a little bit, so we can watch the tobacco. And you've just been to the DR with Pro Cigar and had a chance to visit the operation in the factory,
which was absolutely amazing. I mean, Hochi and his son were absolutely great hosts. Showed us everything. Showed us the tobacco storage, fermentation, production, everything. It was simply an amazing place to be and to see. Yeah, I met Enrique twice, I think, during this week, and a real gentleman. Nothing more to say.
Well, I assume you visited quite a few factories during Pro Cigar
Yeah.
and your time in DR. What was special about the operation at the Tabacalera Palma, or what made you, for you and in your opinion, what made Palma stand out and unique in their approach?
I think that there is a clear structure. who does what, who works on tobacco. It's an absolutely clear structure. It's absolutely clean, not messed up, anything. I think it's great organized, the whole company, from what I saw, which was really the tobacco bales, the fermentation process, the production facilities. It was really, and it's huge. It's really a really, really big company. So the processes are really perfect organized, I think. And the quality of the cigars. I mean, we had the chance to smoke with Hochi and also with Enrique some cigars. It's just great quality for the price value they have in their cigars.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. Here's Enrique just coming back, re-logging on. So hopefully we're back on audio. Enrique, can you hear me? Well, we'll give him a few more seconds. He'll be back for sure. If somebody of you has a question, as always, please feel free to put them into the chat here in the meantime, or make yourselves heard once you're joining us here at the lounge via Zoom. For everybody watching on Facebook, as always, if you have questions, then please put them underneath the live stream. I'm always checking, and I try to forward all your questions to Enrique once he's back live. Carl Martin, our dear friend from Sweden, just commented over on Facebook that the headset of Enrique is probably running out of juice. In any case, Carl Martin, my dear friend, it's a pleasure to see you again, and greetings to you and the family. Hope you're all doing well. And also, whilst Enrique is reconnecting his audio, I would love to share a little video and a little thank you message or greeting message from a dear friend who would have loved to join us today, join us this evening or afternoon, but unfortunately he's busy. But here's a little message from our dear friend, Jose Blanco.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight on Light 'em Up, Reinhard, you have a special guest tonight. My good friend, Enrique Seijas, which is the son of legendary cigar maker, blender, Don Jose Seijas. Enrique, I want to wish you all the best. Good luck tonight on your show. Give your father and your mother a big hug from me, from Emma, and from Jasper. You know you're family to us, and I look forward to see you at the PCA. Everyone have a great time tonight. This kid, I call him a kid because he's much younger than I am. He's good people. Peace. Keep it smoky, guys, and remember to light them up.
I'm very glad and grateful that Jose shared this wonderful message with us today. And yeah, a true testament to the friendship, the community, and the camaraderie within the cigar family. And let's see if Enrique is back now.
Hello.
There we go.
My God, I apologize.
Not at all. Good to have you back.
I apologize. I'm glad to be back.
And I hope you just heard the little message that Jose prepared for you and that he shared for you with us today.
I did not. I do apologize. My audio everything went to stuff. I don't know what happened to my computer, so I put these on.
Well, in this case, here's Jose Blanco again.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight on Light 'em Up, Reinhard, you have a special guest tonight. My good friend, Enrique Seijas, which is the son of legendary cigar maker, blender, Don Jose Seijas. Enrique, I want to wish you all the best. Good luck tonight on your show. Give your father and your mother a big hug from me, from Emma, and from Jasper. You know you're family to us, and I look forward to see you at the PCA. Everyone have a great time tonight. This kid, I call him a kid because he's much younger than I am. He's good people. Peace. Keep it smoky, guys, and remember to light them up.
That is beautiful.
Jose,
that is heartwarming.
Yeah, Jose so badly wanted to be here with us today. Unfortunately, they're doing a recording for their own show, so unfortunately he cannot be here. But he so badly wanted to send this message to you, recorded it, and specifically asked me to share it with you, and all his blessings to you and your family.
Thank you. I'm about to go into tears. You should have done that at the end. Jose is a very good friend of the family, and I got to share more time with him when we were in La Romana. He was actually part of when we were starting Matilde. He moved in La Romana with Emma after La Joya de Nicaragua, and he lived for a while there. So I was able to share. Well, I mean, my dad and him shared a lot during the years, obviously, but me as a person shared even more for those year and a half, 2 years that he was there. As I said, like family. So, but it means a lot that he sent that video.
I would love to use it as a segue to a bit more of the personal component of you working with your dad, and when you actually started, using the factory as a playground, as you said in the beginning. Did you ever intend to ultimately end up in the cigar industry? Because when you inhale it from baby days on, and it's part of your life from childhood days, do you feel like you're obliged to get into it at some point? And with such a strong icon and figure next to yourself, like your father, who is he's part of the Hall of Fame of Cigar Aficionado and considered one of the true legends. Was that a blessing or a burden for you?
Do you want the commercial answer or the true answer?
Always the personal one.
So personally, I loved it. I loved the factory. I loved the cigar manufacturing. It wasn't something that since I was 10 years old, I say I'm going to be a cigar manufacturer. Mm. But I love the industry. I love the people, and more, I worship my father's footsteps. For me, he was my dad, and he was he is a very special person in ways that he, as I said, he saw things differently. He tried to help everybody, and that's how I saw that he did this. I mean, he worked with this company with all his passion. He went through 7 mergers. His whole focus was this factory. With my dad, it was factory first and then family. There's no regrets, there's no grudges, because my dad is a great dad. He was always there for us. But there were times where my mom used to visit my father at the factory during the cigar boom of the 90s, because it was a 24-hour shift and my dad was there till 2 a.m. in the morning. So that's what I grew up seeing. I grew up seeing this man that was my father for starters, and such a great person and engineer and business person. And I just worshipped his footsteps. And I always wanted to work with him. I always wanted to learn. My dad is a person that evolves. He was humble. He knew when he was wrong. He would admit that he was wrong. And those are the things, those are values that I would say many people have, but not people that I know of. So I look forward to learning everything that he had to teach me. I look forward not only on the tobacco side, because people only see the tobacco side, but on the human management side, on the business side, on so many other aspects that people don't see when you're working with making cigars or with manufacturing cigars. And I wanted to learn from him. Simple as that. It wasn't cigars, it would be something else. And be careful what you wish for, because when we started with a smaller operation, he had meetings every day at the larger operation with 12 people, 12 managers, 12 or 13 managers. And my dad was a machine of making work. He created work like nobody else could do, because he was always thinking of what he can do better, what he can do also. But if something was better, he wanted to break it down and make it a little bit better. So because we had 12 different people to let him know what he wanted, he was like, okay, Reinhard, you're going to do this. Johan, you're going to do this. Don, you're going to do this. And they came back to the meeting. So when I started working with him, it was Enrique, you're going to do this. Yeah, you're going to do this. And it was all me. which was a huge burden because I was doing most of that work with my brother at the time. But it was a huge learning opportunity. So, did I see myself owning a cigar brand and working with a cigar brand? Honestly, no. I didn't see myself owning a cigar brand. I didn't see myself having a family business. Did I see myself working together with my father all my life? I saw myself working with my father all my life. I saw myself working at the factory that I rollerbladed at. I saw myself or my kids like rollerblading the same way that I did. That I did see. I did see that passion was transpired towards to my person. Not on the tobacco. I love the tobacco, but on the whole process, on the whole essence of what my dad was. So yes, at some point, yes, I did see myself in the cigar industry, but because of my father, not because of the cigar industry itself. I love it. I wouldn't pick another industry. I've always said there's much easier ways to make money than working in the cigar industry. But there's few industries where it's as pleasurable. You meet as many people and you make so many friends that you can help. So that is the honest answer. The commercial answer would be, oh yeah, of course. My dad was grooming me since I was 10. My first cigar was when I was 12, and so on and so forth. But no, that's the answer. Unfortunately, my dad, I don't know if you're aware, has Parkinson's. So the guidance, I hope that I was going to be guided by my dad for decades and decades and decades. I did not have the fortune of getting that, but I did have the fortune, or I do have the fortune of working with people and with factories that I trust that have a lot of experience. And as my dad always taught me, you are not always right. You learn to people, you learn from people, from your mistakes, and learn from other people's mistakes. So I take guidance and I work with the people, with Hochi, and I work with Ostos. And I can't take credit for everything that I do in Matilde, because many times there might be something that Hochi tells me, oh, you got to do this with this blend. I think you should, better this with this blend. And I don't know it all. I'm not a master blender. I'm far from it. I'm far from being in my dad's or Jose's or anybody else's shadow. Well, I'm in their shadow, but in their level, and I don't think of me as that. But as my dad, every day I strive to learn more of what he used to do as a blender, what he used to do as a manufacturer, and I keep pushing. And thank God I have great partners, manufacturing wise, business wise, commercial wise, that helped me do that. But yeah, basically I'm in here because I'm in the cigar industry because of my father. And it's a cliche, but it is what it is.
Beautifully said, Enrique. I very much appreciate those thoughts. And Cy Sweeney has a few questions, I believe, that perfectly continue that thread of conversation. Cy, welcome, and please put your questions forward.
It might be handy if I went off mute.
Always
good evening, all. Good to see everybody. Very good, very good. And great to see you on Light 'em Up. Great to see you all, as usual. Just a couple of little questions here. I won't take up too much of your time. You once said about your father, I'm working beside him, I'm learning a lot from him, and at some point I'll hopefully be as good and as passionate as he is with cigars. How close to this statement are you now? And the second question is a simple enough one. Besides your father, who has been the biggest inspiration in your life?
So how close am I to my father and being as a blender as he is?
About your passion and everything you wanted to know about cigars.
Oh, my passion is there. My passion knowing about cigars is there. I don't think there's anybody, or there's very few people that are as passionate as my father when it comes to cigars. I mean, the man used to have I don't think he ever fully enjoy the cigar because he was always writing notes on what he was smoking. So I take it as, he always took it as a work, and that was his passion. I'm extremely passionate about cigars. I'm not as passionate as my dad is. I'm not there. I'm building my way to getting there. And when it comes to being what he is, I don't know if I'll ever get there. Hopefully I will. But it's a huge ride, and it's a very different situation for me when it comes to that. And what was your second question?
Besides your father, because we all know what an icon he is in the industry, but in your life, who would be your biggest inspiration outside your father?
Outside my father. So outside my father, when it comes to working with tobacco, as I mentioned before, I take a lot of advice from Hochi, which is where I make my cigars. And outside the cigar industry, there is a person that is like my second dad, who's an uncle. And he is, when it comes to business, he is my mentor. And I take a lot from him when it comes to the business side and the development side of the business. And passionate. He's a family man, as we all are. We're very family oriented. So he would be, his name is Javier Vargas. He's an avid cigar smoker, but he's he's in the lumber business, but he's a very business savvy person. So he's been my mentor in the absence of, my dad being able to be there day after day.
Yeah, brilliant. Listen, thanks for that. Thanks for your time, and thanks for the answers.
Always, I thank you for the questions.
No problem. No problem.
Sai, many thanks for tuning in, and all our love and blessings to you and your family. I know it's a challenging day for you today, but it's so greatly appreciated that you're here with us, and you're part of the family, you know that. So thanks for being here with us. Enrique, regarding your mentor, I'm very curious. Do you think it's important to also have somebody on your side who is not part of the cigar industry, probably offering a different perspective and a different view on business things? Because sometimes I guess, when you're always within the realms of your network, of the industry, maybe it becomes a sort of a narrow view on things.
I think it's huge. I think it is huge, because if you get advice from the same industry, most of the times you get the same type of advice. And when you get somebody that's done very well for himself, business-wise and family-wise, who has a lot of love to you and wants to see you succeed and knows what business takes to do, and he takes it from the outside, you get different types of consejos, of advice that work. And I know with people like that, they will say everything that I want. Sometimes he tells me things that I don't want to hear, period. Because I'll tell you a perfect example. When we started the company, I traveled every 2 weeks, 15 days. I was 6 months out of the year in the States and 6 months out of the year in Dominican Republic. And he was telling me, you're going too hard, you're opening too quickly. You got to keep it tight, keep it simple, develop. You're not a corporation. You're a family business. You have limited resources. And after 3, 4, 5, 6 times that he told me, he's like, well, maybe you might be onto something, because I'm looking at this pattern. And it comes to a point where, and you look at retrospect, when you go through the full market, you're spending money all over, you're not concentrating on one side. And that's what he was telling me. It's like, focus on this area, then on this area. And that's what we started doing. And we started growing more organically that way, instead of putting money behind money and growing the brand. Because at the end of the game, it's a business, and you can always grow a brand or a cigar inorganically, opening new accounts, traveling, spending the money, putting the money behind it. But if you grow it organic, where within that store, you grow the relationship within that store, and you keep it moving that way. And if you focus in that territory, as he was telling me, I see you more often, Reinhard. I talk to you more often. You sell my cigars more. And once that territory is established, you keep on moving to different territories. And not only that, family-wise, he's always told me you need a balance between your family and your business. I live where I don't want to live. I live in the city. I live in Santo Domingo. Obviously, as a cigar person, my option or the logical answer would be live in Santiago as I was living. But I married somebody from the city. She didn't adapt to the city, and you need a balance in life. So what I do now, because and everything, everything adds up and everything works at the end. If I had my factory in Santiago, I couldn't move. But because I don't have my factory in Santiago and I have people that I trust working with on cigars, I travel often. So I go every week. If we're developing something new, I go more often, I stay more time. But if I wouldn't taken that advice from my uncle at that time, I would have told my wife, "Oh, this is where I work. This is our life. This is what pays our life. So we got to stay here." And the contrary, I said, "Okay. Initially, we're going to move. I was going to have an apartment in Santiago and an apartment in Santo Domingo where she lived, and I was going to commute. And then COVID, I guess God had a little bit to do with it. COVID came in, shut down the country, and I stayed. And I said, well, this works. We can do it. But it's out of advice. At the end of the game, you make a lot less mistakes when you take advice from people within your industry. But I think it's very important to have somebody outside of the industry that looks on top, because there's things that they will see that you won't. And at the end of the game, every business is very similar.
Beautiful. We had a question from Macy, who's here with us at the lounge as well. Macy, chime in.
I was on double mute, sound and visual, so I'm prettier and more melodic that way. First of all, I got to ask, who is your favorite Dominican baseball player and favorite team in the Dominican League before I get my cigar question in? I'm a Pedro Martinez man, but and actually in La Romana at a it's where they sell it's outside of the Barcelona and all that. They got a zone. I'm trying to remember. I bought a Pedro Martinez rookie card. I had to spend $20 on it. The best negotiator, el más negociante de mi vida, this guy. He sold me some cigars too, but that Pedro card, man, he worked me. And I went to La Garcia, and I'll tell you, that was an impressive operation. I just, the size of that.
Isn't it crazy?
It blows my mind.
I call it industrialized art, because you keep the art form behind the cigar manufacturing, but there's a lot of processes that the industry was applied, like your cigar presses, your pizza rollers, and all that stuff. And those were, as we were talking about before, those were developments that my dad just testing different things and learning from other places that were established during his tenure there. So my favorite baseball player, and I know you're gonna say that I'm crazy because I'm a Dominican. I don't follow baseball that much.
I don't believe it.
But Pedro Martinez is a very fond member of my in-laws do, and my wife does too. So I usually route to them. And my favorite local baseball team is Los Toros from La Romana. Okay. I was born and raised there. We're not the greatest winners, but we have fun in every single game. And we are the only stadium where you can smoke cigars. And a funny story with that is that going back to things that my dad tried to do to help out employees, he used to buy through the factory, he used to buy a full section, which is the left section where visitors come. But he bought that full section for the factory and used to subsidize it for employees. So we were able to smoke there. And I believe it's still intact. You can still smoke like on the top side, but when I was younger, and you could smoke like in the full section there, and it was meant for employees of Tabacalera de Garcia. So it was a subsidized or like an entertainment for employees and for rollers and bunchers. So Toro is my heart.
If there was anything that cool, that would surprise me. But
different times.
That was a much cooler answer than I expected. You talked a little bit about business and marketing. That was a much greater answer than I expected. That was supposed to be the appetizer. But my question is kind of on the inside baseball, the business. You actually talked about marketing and answered a question I had. But my question is, I think it was the last couple of days, I read a report that the Scandinavian Tobacco Group this past year reported profits of $200 million, which is a lot of Danish kroner. I could read. So what I'm trying to figure out is someone who spends all my money on cigars, it doesn't seem like the brick and mortar folks are making the money. It doesn't seem like all of it's going to the family people. I wish maybe that will change. I hope it does. We can support those type of businesses, yours. But where are the real, because you seem uniquely positioned to answer this question with your background. Where are the real profit centers in this business? Is it online retail? Is it being massively vertically integrated like STG? And because I'll be honest, there are, I believe, much better cigars out there. So, I mean, that blew my mind. $200 million in profit. They need to spend some damn money on the FDA fight. They can afford the FDA lawyers. And okay, I'm getting off my hot box, but apparently there's money in the cigar business. I mean, STG at least needs to stop. So I guess where are the real profit centers based upon what you've seen?
Well, obviously, it helps to be vertically integrated simply because your costs are lower. And when you're a company of that size and you're going from farm to actual retail store, your margins are huge. They're just humongous because you're making a cigar that factory costs. And obviously, everything has a stage and every business center makes their money. But at the end of the game, it's a bottom line, right? So when it comes to companies of that size, they have huge margins because of how they're structured. Saying they go from factory to consumer, right? If I were to have a factory and sell direct to consumers, your margins would be huge. I mean, they're huge, but you have to keep in mind that when there's different steps. So you go from farm, you buy, then you go to manufacturing, then you have to go through distributions, which you put a lot of money into marketing. Then you go into the retailer, and then the retailer sells it to you. So that cigar that you're paying, anywhere, $4, $5, $6, $20, $30, $40, the brand owners or the company is not really seeing a full load of that money because everybody has their margin. There's a cost in every single step of the way. So where your margins are, if you go vertically integrated from one step to completion, you will get most of your revenue or your margins. But it comes to a point where you have to have the size to be able to do that. If you try to go full vertically integrated and you have a full operating factory and you have a store and you have a field, and besides your finance, and you're making cigars, but you're making more cigars than you're selling, at the end of the game, you're not going to have that profit, or you're going to have financial cash flow issues. Because the profits will be there, but you have cash flow issues. So obviously, the more vertically integrated when you are you have a successful brand or a large selling brand, the more margins you're going to get. Does that answer your question?
Very well. It sounds like, if I may summarize your words, I'm a lawyer. I get accused of doing that all the time, so I guess guilty here. But so it sounds like there is not generally a profit center. There are just, if done right, like in any business, margins to be made at every step along the way, and just the monsters or the large, whatever you want to call them, the STGs of the world, the Altadis, they're global companies with years behind them that were creations of mega merger after mega merger after mega merger. So I guess it's just the profits are dispersed. There's not one real center.
They're dispersed, and if you think about it, a 50% margin for the factory is not the same as a 50% margin for the store, or it's not the same for the 50% margin of the distributors, for you're selling at different prices. So everything's dispersed through the supply chain, I guess. And I think it was 7 mergers for ITG. I think that's how many mergers my dad went through before he retired. There's a lot of mergers going around. But as I said, obviously there's easier ways to make money. It's just a fun way, and it's a passionate way to do it. And if you're going to make money, it's somehow, you might as well love what you're doing, because if you don't like what you're doing, you can be a millionaire, and it's just not going to be worth the money that you're making. So.
Where were you before law school, sir? No, thank you for your time.
Macy, brilliant. Many thanks. Always great to have you on. Brian, your chance. Here's your business pitch. Go ahead.
Oh, here we go. Hello, good morning from California. Macy is hilarious. I love you. You're my favorite.
I love your background, Brian. Huh?
Oh, I'm in my garden.
That is beautiful.
Compliments. First, great hair. I'm sorry about my hair. Your hair is amazing. I don't know what.
I thought that was your hairdo, man.
Also, I love the phrase. You come back around again and you say at the end of the game. I'm loving this. Like people say at the end of the day. Okay, fine, but I'm using it now. I'm stealing it at the end of the game. That's a great phrase.
Thank you.
I had a question about the resurrection of an old company. I think it's a cool concept in general. You see it a lot in the wine industry. And some months ago, I think on the lounge we had, I think it was Kurt Kendall with 724.
Yes.
And I'm curious, as you're having success and people are buying your products, what do you think it comes down to most at the end of the day? Do you think the success comes from this story of this old brand and people love that and they gravitate towards it? Do you think it's more great job on the marketing that's going really well, everything's panning out? Do you think it comes down to just pure quality? You know what you're making is great and people keep buying it? Or is it some combination of all of them, I guess?
I think it's a combination. So let's say we have a brand story, not only for the revival, because I don't think the reviving of the old brand does that much when it comes to the marketing wise. That it's more for us as a family to pay homage to the country. Because if you look at a brand like La Aurora, which is it's an ongoing brand since 1903, and it's the same family, that you have the brand tradition, right? In our case, we wanted to pay homage to our country in our own way, and that's where the reviving of the brand comes in, right? And we have the family history of my dad, which obviously opened a lot of doors. In our case with Matilde, we knew a lot of retailers, we know a lot of tobacco people and manufacturing people, so that obviously eases away. When it comes to the consumer, I think it's a combination of everything. First of all, if you don't have the right packaging and it's a brand that's not known, if you don't know the brand and their packaging is correct, you'll be gravitate towards it. So you'll be more inclined to try it, right? But if you try that cigar and it sucks, you're never going to try it again. So that's where the quality and the consistency of cigar comes in. Then comes consistency. If you tried it and you loved it, and then you try it again and it's a totally different cigar, you're going to say, I'm not willing to pay $8 for this cigar every time. So I'm just not going to buy it. And then it goes to the connection. And I think that's where the family connection, that's where the retailer connection, that's where places which I greatly appreciate that Reinhard has set up in other interviews, because that's where us as smaller companies, family companies, can actually share our experience and share our story, share what we do and how we do it. Because as you were saying, we don't have STG money or Altadis money. We have the passion, we have the quality, we have the product. And the best way to share this is, my dad always said, your best marketing is putting the cigar in people's mouths. So that comes out of interviews, that comes out of traveling and doing events. It's that full combination that actually brings success. And sometimes it just doesn't work and you have to keep on pivoting. So it goes different ways. It's just like on and evolving and evolving. For example, we were focused on not coming out with many products and keeping consistency in our blends. We didn't develop anything new for 4 years, and it hurt us because people were going for what's new, and what's new. So that's when we developed the limited exposure program, and we will be developing different things in smaller quantities, and making sure they're correct in what we believe in the blending and the manufacturing. But everything is a pivot. But I think in cigars, and when it comes to companies our size, there's a lot of that emotional connection or that personal connections to the consumer that helps the brand succeed and move along and be it. Because you're saying, well, I know Enrique, or I've met him in this and Light Him Up, and I know his story, and his cigars are great. Oh yeah, these are Matilde. I talked about it. And you become an ambassador, and Reinhard becomes an ambassador, Macy becomes an ambassador, Don becomes an ambassador. Everybody becomes an ambassador, and that's how it works. It's a system. It's a family. Brothers of the leaf and sister of the leaf. It's a true thing. You go to a cigar lounge and you don't know anybody. You have a cigar anywhere, and it's a true thing. It's a cliche, and everybody talks about it, but it's true. And when you travel as much as I did, it's true. I mean, I had no conversation. I'd be like, hey, what are you smoking? And that was it. And there's no freaking industry in the world where if you have a $20 cigar in your pocket and I liked you, and we have the same palate, say, yeah, I have $20. Smoke it. Let me know what you think. There's very few industries where you do that kind of stuff. And it's a connection. It's something beautiful. So I think for us, in our level, that connection, that personal connection helps a lot in the brand success.
Thanks. Cool. That's great. All right. Yeah. Put it all together and you win at the end of the game. Cheers.
Now, we also had another question from Peter, who is here with us at the lounge.
Enrique, I want to say thank you for joining us. It's a delight to get to know you and hear the background of the cigar brand that I've been enjoying. I've worked through the core line, and so far I've settled on the Oscura as being my favorite. So hats off to you.
Yeah.
Your answer to Sai's question about your father and the way you want to mature into who he is as a person and as a blender sparked a question that I have. As a serious cigar smoker, I hear this term master blender all the time. And I never know exactly what that entails and what it takes to become one. You say that your dad is a master blender and you are not, but what does it take? In our minds, it's you sit down with a bunch of bales of tobacco and you select from here and there, and you smoke it, and you say, I don't like one, but I need that. I need that in this. And what can I do to produce that effect? But what do you as a blender, how do you define it, and what do you want to do to get better at it?
Basically, it's experience. My dad used to or compares blending to trial and error. As you were saying, you have tobaccos that blend well with one, with seed that blends well with one seed. You have tobaccos, and through years and years and years of trying tobacco and blending tobacco and working with different blends, you get a knowledge base of what works and what doesn't work. And I say master blender or these extreme or these amazing people that have great palate and they have this huge knowledge base of the tobaccos that they work with and able to create a blend all the time. And you can compare them to chefs. You could be a great cook, but these chefs that come out and they mix the less probable ingredients because they believe they will work and they have the experience, and that's where you get like that excellence. I think to become a master blender, it takes many years. I mean, nobody can be a master blender, I believe, at my age, or a very successful blender at my age. I try, I smoke, I see, and I try again. But let's say, for example, when I was younger and I played around with blends with my dad, right? And it's a very specific story. Mi Dominicana. When my dad was in Altitude, there was a cigar called Mi Dominicana. And I won't divulge a blend, obviously, but it's a simple blend. It was a great cigar, creamy cigar, nice sweetness to it. And it was 100% Dominican cigar, right? And I would say, oh, I want to try this something new. I want to try this new wrapper on it. And my dad automatically said, nope, that's not going to work. I'm like, I'm going to try it anyways. Whoop. Okay, fair, go for it. Yo, the moment I tried that cigar, it tasted like fucking bad shit. I was like, that sucks. And he knew that because of the experience and what he knows and his knowledge base of what works. And it happened to me many times with Matilde. I was like, Dad, let's do this and this and this and this and this. He's like, no, that's not gonna work because he's like, this won't blend well with this, and it will just, this will be overpower this. And that is where I go towards being somebody that's a master blender. As I am learning and as I am trying, it takes more time for me to come with a blend and to understand how the tobaccos work together. When you have a person that has 40 years of experience of blending cigars and working with tobacco, 50 years, 60 years of actually smoking and blending, you have that, and they know it, and they can come to much more balanced and beautiful blends in a shorter period or more precise period of time, and they know what they're looking for. They're focusing. While you're playing, you're in a playground, these guys are focusing. They say, okay, let's do this. So to be able to get this profile, we have to go here, 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 let's start there. And they have a starting point. At the end of the game, blending is always about trial and error. You're never going to get it the first time. Our first production was set aside. We had about 3,000, 5,000 cigars produced because during that first production of Renacer, my dad tried something else. And he said, oh shit, this works better. And it was changing from a leaf that was a seco to a leaf that was a ligero. And he was like, okay, let's take these 5,000 cigars and put them aside and they start, and this is the Renacer blend. And it's always at it. It's always that trial and error and that trying. Right, master blender, I think, first of all, it's a palate, and second of all, and very importantly, it's experience. It's knowing your tobaccos, knowing how they work with each other. And that's where it's just basically time and smoking. I mean, smoking a lot and trying a lot. So when I said that I might not get to my father's level, it's just being honest and being true with yourself. I'm not at the factory all the time. I'm working and I'm learning. But my dad, if you went to my dad's office, he had trays of different types of tobaccos. He used to smoke different types of tobacco all the time. He was smoking all the time, constantly. When it was a cigar was fully made, he was taking notes on the cigar. It was a whole different concept. It was a whole different mindset because his life was manufacturing and industry and blending. Where in my case, I'm learning the manufacturing, I'm learning the blending because it's something that it's pivotal in the brand. But I'm also working on the sales and moving it along. My dad had the opportunity and the blessing of working in this huge factory with all types of tobacco and just being able to dig in and find his love, his passion, and get in. And that's how you get to being a master blender. And giving this, as my father, he would never take credit for any blend that he did by himself. He had a group, which were the people that he worked with, his managers, which initially most of them didn't smoke when we started out, and then everybody started smoking and started getting their experience. But my dad would never say, I made that blend, I made that cigar. That is not a fact, and that is not true. Everybody has a team. And my dad, I don't know everybody, but my dad had a team, and that team was responsible for the blends. My dad was ahead of the blending team. My dad had the final say when it came to the actual point of we're saying this is what we're going to present to the market. But it's a group of people. And in my case, it's a group of people as well. I don't go into the factory. I don't go into Tabacalera Palma and I say, okay, let's do this and this and this. I sit down with Hochi or I sit down with Osos and I say, I want to look for this profile. I want to make this cigar. I want this. And I actually pivot a lot or take a lot of base on my dad's work because I love my dad's work. So I say, I want something that's going to taste like this. So I remember he did this. So I want to start, this is a starting base I want to do. And then I would work with Hochi and he'd say, okay, so we can do this. We can try this. And you learn because Hochi is a much better blender than I am. He has a lot more experience than I do. And how stupid would I be to think that I would know better? How stupid would I think? Well, I was stupid enough to think I would know better sometimes with my dad. He was like, nah, that's not gonna work. And that's how you do it. And at least for me, that's how I do it. Everything that we do in Matilde is a group. It's a tie. It helps, and everybody. It's a system that we work together. My dad did it that way, and I plan to do it that way my whole life. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Okay. That's
I usually
very,
pivot.
yeah. No, thank you. That's very illuminating and very thorough. And again, a testament to why Light 'em Up is the best show on the entire internet. Thank you, Reinhard. Thank you, Enrique.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the kind words, and thanks for the great question. Much appreciated. Enrique, if I probably may add something, I also believe that a very critical component of the master blender's work is not just the original creation process of a new cigar, but you before put a lot of emphasis on the consistency. And I think that's where a lot of the master blender's experience comes in as well, that with every crop you're dealing with changing parameters. You have varying stock, but you always need to keep the consistency of your hero there, or change nuances, more challenging and even more critical in the work for the holistic picture of a master blender, to keep that consistency.
That's where the work comes in. You're 100% right. Creating their first blend is the easiest part of a master blender because they have everything. So as you're saying, keeping it consistent year after year is what works. And you're never going to have the same blend. I mean, it's never gonna. And this is something. There's few things that my dad always mentioned and always highlights in my head. The first thing is consistency. So the crudest way that he put it is that if you make a cigar that tastes like shit, make sure it tastes like shit every time. Because the people that like it are going to look for that taste all the time. Obviously, you want to make a cigar that tastes like shit, but that's the crudest way that he could put it, right? And then, as I said initially, I mean, the fun part for him was creating the blend when the work came in, and where the actual experience, as you were saying, when it comes to knowing the tobaccos and knowing how they react with each other and how they blend with each other, is keeping that consistency year after year. And one thing that he said, and he always repeated, is that no cigar is the same. Doesn't matter if it's from the same batch, doesn't matter if it's from the same day of production. What you're looking for as a cigar manufacturer is that the essence, the flavors, or the essence, the balance, that cigar that you smoke, that Renacera, that Serena, that Oscura, that limited exposure that you smoked the first time, it's going to remind you of the first one that you smoked, and it's going to remind you all the time. But they're never going to be the same because, first of all, it's a handmade process. Second of all, it's leaves, so they're natural. So you can't say, okay, let's put 20 grams of piloto, let's put 30 grams of they're leaves. So he's always said, you got to make sure they're brothers, they're sisters, they're cousins. And if you take your first blend and then you go 10 years later and you smoke them together, they might have a large discrepancy, or a similar, a discrepancy, that noticeable discrepancy. But year after year, you've been working with that blend, so it reminds you of that first time you smoked it.
That's a very good analogy, and also what I think is highly fascinating. When we had Hamlet Paredes on the show, he also, with the perspective of a roller, mentioned that there's a little bit of a blending process going on with every single cigar that you roll, because of the experience that the Banchero or the team or that one roller has, just by the way the tobacco feels in his hand and the texture of the leaf. And as you said, every single leaf is slightly different, so you might have to do minor adjustments of how you fold or how you place the leaf in order to keep that profile. And George Brightman reminded me of that aspect again, and he said that a large part of the master blender's work is also to be able to control the Galera floor and control the room and make sure that all your bancheros and all the rollers are making the job as perfectly as possible in order to be a little bit of a blender themselves with every single cigar that they're rolling. And I thought that was a very fascinating process.
You gotta, for them, you have to make it as mechanical as possible. So you select the, so usually what you do is that you put the tobaccos as they're supposed to be picked. So they pick and then they finish in order to close. But as you're saying, sometimes they'll take a leaf that's a little bit smaller. So I say, okay, wait, I gotta take another one. So at the end of the game, the true heart, and it's good that you mentioned the bunchers and the rollers, because the true heart and the actual blenders of the cigar are the bunchers. Well, the bunchers in this case, the rollers put the leaf on, but the actual bunchers. And if they're doing a crappy job or they're not doing correctly, you can have the best tobacco in the world and the best blend or the best blend in book in the world. And if they're not doing it correctly, they're not taking the amount of leaves I need to take for each close one, it's not going to come out as a great cigar. So yes, at the end of the game, the top or the final blend is decided, and there's kind of that blending, as you were saying, on the roller, on the buncher side.
Enrique, a bit earlier in the show, you mentioned that you didn't intend to, own your own cigar brand or your own make your own cigar as a living, right? There was one wonderful interview that I listened to while I was preparing for the show when you were on Box Press with Rob Gagne from Bovida. And you mentioned that idea of the pineapple cigar that at some point in your life you wanted to bring to fruition. Will that ever happen?
I actually have a branding for it.
Really?
I have it registered. I have a branding. So I'll tell the story so everybody can get the context out of it. We are very united as a family, and Dominicans are very united, period. But in my family, we were very united. And when it was a PCA at that time, I think it was IPCPR, it was IPCPR still. And my mom speaks English, she can communicate in English, but she's not as fluent as I am because she didn't have the fortune of having parents I was sent to English school all my life. Thank God for my parents that were able to, afford it, right? And she's introducing me to Ben and Joel Sherman from Nat Sherman. And they've known each other for a long time. My dad manufactures cigars for them in Tabacalera as a private label, right? And he's like, yes, Enrique, this is Ben, this is Enrique. Do you know? And I was, I think we've met by passing, but hi, how are you? And he's like, your family and my family, they're very similar. They're in my and they're from a piñao. We're like pineapple. And I look at my mom, I was like, what are you talking about? My pineapple? What do you mean? And Ben's looking at me, he's like, yo mami, ¿qué tú quieres decir? What are you talking about? And she comes out and she says, no, que somos apiñao. There's a saying in Dominican or in Spanish, apiñao. You know, a pineapple is a group of berries tied together to make the pineapple fruit. So when we say that we're apiñao, it's a very tight-knit group of a family. So that's where it comes from. Apiñao, I have it's a registered brand, Apiñao, and I have the branding for it, Apiñao. So it is there, it is in the back burner. It's something that I might come out. A lot of plants stopped due to FDA initially, but I'm retaking stuff. So it would be at some point a cigar brand, Apiñao. And it would be Apiñao de Carmen, which is my mother, because it's her thing. It's funny because in my house now she gets pineapples. She has a friend of ours had a tray or a tray, a tray with a pineapple, and it says on the bottom, our family is like pineapple. So yeah, it's there. It's developed, and the branding is developed. We just have to start working on something. But we have a few things closer in the project. We will be hopefully coming with something new in September.
Perfect. Well, I think
it's fun that you got the Apiñao. It's awesome. Not many people know about the Apiñao. You did your research.
I always do. And you know, I think it's a lovely story. And one of the reasons why it stuck with me is my background is in wines and spirits and hospitality. And the pineapple is a symbol for hospitality and has a very special meaning in that context of how the symbol of people coming together, us being together, and that's also what Light 'Em Up has always been, you know, the camaraderie and the community and bringing people together. So that's very truly stuck with me, and I thought it was lovely, and I look forward to one day seeing that cigar of yours with the.
We can say that Light 'Em Up is apiñao.
Absolutely.
We'll make an apiñao for Light 'Em Up.
We'll make that one together, a very special edition. And Enrique, it also brings me to the last question for tonight, which is very much linked to the piñao, because I'm curious as to what do cigars ultimately symbolize for you, and what is it that still, after all these years, the special connection with your father, everything that you have experienced business-wise, the challenges, the hurdles, the positives, the negatives, what still sparks your interest and your passion about this very wonderful product that sort of brings us all together here as well?
Family. That's why I take out cigars. Family. And we cigars are a family. La Galera is a family. Factories are a family. Consumers are family. It's just a big group of people that treat each other as a family. Doesn't matter where you are, if it's on the field, if it's in the factory, if it's in the office, if it's in the store, if it's within people you don't know, if it's here in Light 'Em Up. If we met at PCA and we just clicked it off, it's family. It's just a connection, a deep connection that allows you to get to know people better. It's a passion that connects people and allows people to become family, or to say, I hate him. I mean, there's always people that you won't like, and as Jose Blanco loves to say, I mean, the worst thing, the only bad cigar is a cigar you're smoking besides an asshole, and it's true. But that asshole has family too, and has people that like him. Yeah. So it's just a thing that connects everybody together, and there's people that do so much in the industry. You can mention many people here in Dominican Republic that help out not only in their factories, but help out their community. And it's because it's a very family-oriented operation from the beginning to the end. So it's got soul.
Yeah, and I think in days like these, in challenging times that we're all living through, we can do more of that, and we can use more of all that together.
For sure.
And family and things that bring us together. Beautifully said.
That's for sure. And also money. You got to make money making cigars.
Fair enough. And Enrique, we wish you that all these things come to fruition for your family. Nothing but the very best. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show. And, you know, I always feel with the people that log on, that join us for the shows, that take time out of their day, precious time that they spend with us here. It is so greatly appreciated, and I'm so happy that we can share such amazing stories. And you always feel there's like a special energy. And as you mentioned, when we met at PCA last year, you know immediately what Jose Blanco so perfectly explained. You're good people, and with an open heart, you always meet those people along the journey, along the way, that are headed into the same direction. And it's always wonderful to see that and experience that, and have the pleasure of spending very precious time together. So thank you from heart.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's always a pleasure to spend time with people as great as you and everybody here at the Light 'Em Up.
Enrique, from heart, thanks for being on the show today. All the very best, and I can't wait to see you again, hopefully at the PCA latest again this year. And in the meantime, be safe and well, Light 'Em Up, and take care. All the very best to you and the family.
Likewise, Light 'Em Up, people. Light 'Em Up.
Thanks a lot, Enrique.